Welcome back to Supernatural First Watch Podcast, a rewatch podcast designed to be spoiler-free and enjoyed if it's your first watch. I'm your host, Kimberly, a self-proclaimed sci-fi and fantasy nerd, and we're going to talk about Supernatural. Today we are covering Dead in the Water. Previously on, I do highly encourage you to actually watch the previously on segments when you're able to. I first watched these episodes on Netflix, and it had it set where it automatically skipped the previously on segment. And I actually found as I kept going that a fun arrangement of this previously on segment was really interesting to see. Plus, it actually expanded the storytelling itself and had some really great music. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll just skip it over, it's actually designed to be a part of the storytelling. So I would highly recommend you do so. Previously on Supernatural, we left the brothers after they had found and hunted down a Wendigo, following the coordinates that their father had given them in the pilot. Of course, surprise, they didn't find Dad. And while Sam is annoyed and wanting to find their father, strictly obsessed with finding the killer of his girlfriend Jessica and thinking that his father will be the key to that, Dean is in it for helping others and thinks that Dad wanted him to take on the family business and take it over with Sam. So we open like we normally do with our cold open around a normal family morning of somebody in Wisconsin. It's a family with a brother and sister, and they have a fun exchange about working out. Of course, this is my first pet peeve about the episode. She's dressed in workout clothes and obviously being teased by her brother about working out too much. However, then we cut to her in a bathing suit about to dive into a lake off the dock. And in later dialogue, it's very clear that this is a lake in their own backyard, so I'm really confused as to why she actually would dress up in workout clothes if she's just going to walk out her backyard instead of just going out in a swimsuit. Like, clearly that is the thing to do. Why on earth would you be in a tracksuit in order to go dive into the water? That is my pet peeve. And then another one, we get the beginning of what we consider the very tropey horror film scenes. Number one, of course, is the big wide open water, not sure what's going to go on, and she goes to dive into the water. However, it looks to me, from this angle at least, that she belly flopped into the water. It doesn't look very graceful. It actually looked like it might have really hurt, but that is very intriguing. And then, of course, we get the shot of it came from the deep. It's essentially a shot-by-shot trope inspired filmmaking of any sort of water-based spirit or water-based wraith, or there's something in the water. We get the shots from underneath the water where she's, happily swimming along. We get shots of the far away shots where we can see, and then, of course, some sort of ominous music, and she's pulled under with the bubbles and, of course, never seen again. So something is clearly in the water, and that is where we are. And then we cut to our pair of brothers, and it's the first time we see them trawling the newspaper for a case. And this is very intriguing. Dean is the person who has found this particular case, which I find intriguing because, Dean's the one who's been doing this. He knows what to look for. He's clearly been doing this for most of his adult life. And Sam, of course, is still hung up on Dad. And Dean is all about killing the creatures, right? So the brothers find the case and decide that they are going to head over to Lake Manitowoc, Wisconsin. They pose and talk to the local sheriff, who tell them, they've dredged the lake and found absolutely nothing, even though it is the third body, it's the sixth body over the last 35 years that nobody knows about what happened. So during this conversation, another cute woman with a young son walks in, and Dean, of course, is intrigued, but she's clearly having none of it, which I found very, very funny. And then while they're talking to him, They realize that, they need a place to stay. And so the sheriff's daughter walks them to a location, and she's clearly having none of this. And she says, yep, as I said, a couple of blocks, and wanders on off. They do a little bit more research and find out that those 6 people, not just a few in the last few years, have disappeared over the last 35 years. But of course, that Lucas, the young child they saw earlier who did not seem interested in talking, had actually seen his father drown. So they decide, you know what, we probably need to talk to the kid, but what is that going to look like? How do we make that happen? So they go to chat with the boy and the mom. Of course, the mom thinks they're back to hit on her again, so Sam, being the less intimidating person, he's the one who sits while Dean goes to talk to the kid. And it's very clear that Dean is good with kids. He is intrigued. He's actually able to speak with them, despite the exchange that he and Sam had earlier in the episode about not even being able to have a conversation with a child. Of course, we also get a little bit of foreshadowing in this research, little back story where Dean and Sam talk to the brother, and he says something along the lines of, my sister was such a great swimmer, she would have been as safe in that lake as she was in her own bathtub, which of course is going to be very good foreshadowing coming up. So they talk to the sheriff a little bit more, and of course they're busted. He knows they are not who they said they were, and wants them out of his town. And they also, of course, find out that the lake is about to go bye-bye. A dam is being built, and that means the lake is going to be drained, which of course will have implications for whatever is in the water. In the course of the conversation with the child, he hands over a house, and while they are doing their own little investigating, they realize the house is the Carlton house. Of course, that night, the brother drowns in the kitchen sink, with some more really trope-tastic filmmaking. At first, it's always washing dishes. Then, of course, the sink backfills with black water, and the son removes the stopper, sticks his hand into the water. Of course, the water remains, so he decides to stick his hand in again, and he gets pulled into the water. Of course, that also means there's something in the water, not just something in the lake. Meanwhile, the brothers decide to visit Lucas again to try and get a little bit more from him beyond the house that they was initially shown to Dean. And in the course of that conversation, another picture is handed over, this time with a church. And they go on a merry hunt to find said house near a church. Once they find the house, they go and have a conversation with the woman who lives there to find out that her son, Peter Sweeney, vanished 35 years ago, there's that timeline again, with his red bicycle. If you caught it, during the initial conversations they had with Lucas, there were a ton of red bicycles. While there, Dean also sees a photo of Pete with Bill Carlton, and they think that there is something amiss, and obviously something is connected. Of course, before they can have a further conversation with the man, even though they went to seek him out for answers, he is on the lake, and the boat is flipped over, and he vanishes under the water. The sheriff really does not want Dean and Sam in town anymore, and only knows that they did not kill Bill because somebody else saw him enter the lake as well. He gives them a choice. Either you leave town or I call the cops and you get arrested. And of course they say that they'll take door number 2, but we all know that's probably not going to happen. After this conversation goes on, we cut back to the cute mom, and she is about to take a bath. Another full of trope cinematography, but very fun, because even though you might sit there and be shouting at the television, don't do it. you know she will anyway. So she is filling a bathtub to take a lovely bath, decides to get in, and of course, while her eyes are closed and she is relaxing, the water turns black and somebody tries to drown her. We get an excellent shot of her son pounding on the door, but of course he still won't talk. And there's water flowing out of the room when they stop by her house. And of course, they're all very, very scared and wanting to know what is going on. But they save her from the drowning, and I gotta say, this is some great just-in-time savage. The others seem to drown immediately as soon as they were pulled into the water, or at least that's the assumption that we have. However, she is under that water for quite some time, fighting, and then of course gets pulled under again, just in time for Sam and Dean to break into the bathroom and drag her out, even though the water was overflowing so badly, it is drooping out from underneath the bathroom door and all the way down the steps. After she clearly gets cleaned up, they have another conversation with Lucas, who they know has seen something, and he leads them to a spot by the lake where they are told to dig. Afraid of what they're going to find, they actually find the red bicycle. And the grandfather, also known as the sheriff, is not having it and is holding them both at gunpoint. And he does reveal that as a child, him and his buddy Bill Carlton bullied a kid so badly they accidentally drowned him. And instead of telling anybody, letting the police know that it was a mistake, or even using their 8-year-old brains at the time and running to an adult because they were scared, they had the wherewithal to let his body sink into the bottom of the lake, and they chose to bury the bike and tell nobody. Gotta think, all right, what kind of thinking does it take for an 8-year-old to be able to do that? Because we are hitting all of the tropes, Lucas has been sent back into the house, but of course he does not listen, and he leaves the house in search of the little boy because he's seen him before. He goes off to the very end of the exact same dock where he sees the little boy floating just below the water, and he's reaching out to him and of course gets pulled in. The sheriff, realizing when he's been had and wanting to save his grandson, walks into the water and asks for it to take him and leave his grandson. And for some strange reason, the spirit actually acquiesces. My thought process on this is that because the other children that were drowned were over the age of 18, they are considered adults in his mind, whereas the little boy he didn't take when he was swimming with his father and won't take him again because he doesn't actually want to harm another child. Either way, the sheriff is now drowned, and Dean is able to come up with Lucas and save the day. Dean and Sam are getting ready to leave, and now, of course, Lucas is talking, and no problem, no worries, and is a very interesting little parting rapport. Dean has taught Lucas one very important phrase, which is Zeppelin rules, calling back to Dean's love obsession with classic rock and, of course, what is a good portion of this series soundtrack. So, that is There's Something in the Water. Dead in the Water is the episode title. And that is where we're at. So the local legend, there's not really a legend per se. It's just a bunch of unexplained drownings and nobody knows why. A couple of other things that they throw out is water wraiths, some kind of demon or something that controls water. But they don't actually know what the supernatural baddie is. At the end, I do believe it is essentially a spirit that was wronged and is killing those who killed him. However, it does not get an actual name. Who are we this week? This week, the brothers impersonate Fish and Wildlife Service people, and in a nice break from what happens most of the time in these types of situations where our main character impersonates somebody else and never gets caught, not only do they get caught, but they don't even get caught at the end. They get caught right in the middle and do have to talk their way out of it. And in fact, there are a couple of conversations that happen where the sheriff clearly knows what's what because he says, hey, but because you're federal wildlife officers, you already know that, right? But of course they don't. So this week they're impersonating federal wildlife officers, and of course they have the credentials to go with it. How to kill it. In this instance, they don't actually seem to kill the spirit. The spirit takes its final victim, which is the other person who helped kill it, and is willing to give back the child. We just have to assume that the spirit is not going to take anybody else before the lake completely empties. However, they do not actually kill the spirit because the body is somewhere on the bottom of the lake and is not going to be able to find it. Body count for this episode includes Sophie, Will, and Bill Carlton, and Jake Devins. We do not see the others die on screen, so I'm going to keep the body count to those we actually see die, or those we see alive and then know they have died later in the episode, for a grand total of 4. So, you've seen them before. The lovely mom of Lucas, lovely Andrea Barr, is played by Amy Acker, a very familiar face to those in the sci-fi, fantasy, and futuristic world. She had a recurring character on Angel, and she played Fred Burke, and also another callback to Person of Interest. Our woman in white from the pilot was a main character on Person of Interest, and Amy Acker also is as well. She plays the character Root. And Amy Acker has also had roles in not supernatural, but superhero shows and a whole bunch of other places where she gets to play a nerdiness. But that is where we have most definitely seen her before. So, this episode, again, not, I believe, as strong as the pilot, and literally the entire time I was watching it, again, for this recording, my thought was, oh, here's another horror trope, here's another horror trope, here's another horror trope. I know exactly what's about to happen, and I can even predict the camera angles. So this episode, I think, really did play into the supernatural-themed previous media we've all seen before, but it does tell an interesting story. Also, I don't think any of the deaths are a surprise. I don't think any of the connections are a surprise. And my favorite is the suicide by spirit, because I do believe Bill Carlton had an idea as to what was going on. He lost his children, and he wasn't interested in staying alive, so he went out into the lake knowing it was probably going to take him. Overall, a solid watch. Nothing really intriguing, nothing really different, nothing really that surprising. The only thing I do want to comment on is that Dean clearly knows how to connect with children. Even though this is the exact same episode where Dean instigates a no hugging and interrupts a conversation that he's having with Sam to say, hey, no emotions, we're not here for that. Clearly he does know how to connect, and he really does know how to connect with children. A good idea behind this for myself is based off of their conversations that we've seen so far, and based off the fact that Sam is willing to talk to Dean, but really has almost no interest in talking to his father, except as a tool to find the person who killed his girlfriend. I do believe Dean probably had a lot to do with raising Sam growing up. That is just kind of my thought at this point. Just as a reminder, I have seen all the way through season 14 of Supernatural. I have not finished it. I decided I wanted to sit down and do a fun podcast before hitting the end, so I do not know how the show ends. Please, if you are submitting questions, no spoilers. But also, I've only seen the show once before, so a lot of my thoughts, ideas, and predictions are strictly based off of what I think might be happening, because this is only the second time I have watched any of this, and trust me, after 15 seasons, you're not necessarily going to remember all of the interesting bits and pieces. And I kind of binged it over the course of like 3 months. I literally sat down and watched it. I was quite ill, so I don't have clear recollections of everything. So when I say, gee, I think this is what that means, I am guessing as much as you are. So clearly, though, Dean knows how to relate to kids, even though Sam is quite surprised by this. Also, you can kind of see, and this moves into our Dean and Sam relationship section, that Sam is kind of surprised that Dean has a different recollection of their mom and a different kind of perspective of her murder. He didn't really, I think, connect the dots. He didn't really connect the dots that he essentially saw his own mother murdered. And he remembers a time before they became hunters, or maybe not. I'm not sure. It's not really clear. But clearly, their parents are living in a normal house. They're not on the road. So who knows when the hunting started. But it is very clear that, they had a loving family. So Dean has a different perspective of growing up than Sam does. And Sam, of course, is a little bit surprised that Dean is willing to share his thoughts around his mother's murder with a complete stranger. So that is a very interesting look. And I want to talk a little bit about the reasoning behind them continuing to hunt. Dean is clearly looking for a case. He is trawling the newspaper, reading headlines, and he's the one who finds the case, but he's actually looking for indicators. And because they're not actually in town, he's got some sort of setup. I'm not entirely sure how, but he has some sort of setup to find instances in which things aren't quite right and indicates it might be a case for them. Right now they're in Wisconsin. Before, they were wherever the Wendigo was. I believe it was near Arizona. So they have traveled quite far from California. In case you're not up on your geography, or geography is not your strong suit, or you haven't actually put thought to it, or you're not a local to the USA, Wisconsin to California is about a 33-hour drive. So just to give you a sense as to how far Wisconsin is from Stanford, that's how far they have traveled over however long it's actually been. That is the other piece. It's not clear to me how long it's been since they went to Jericho looking for their father until now, only 2 episodes later. And as I said earlier, Sam is looking for their father now strictly because he wants help in finding Jessica's killer. Again, he's not all that motivated to find Dad, and he's actually annoyed that the trail is getting so cold. Whereas Dean is taking Dad's instructions for what they are. We're here to pick up the family business. We are here to find what's going on in the world and to be hunters, to protect others and to save others. So I find that a very intriguing look between the two brothers, because here's a guy who went to school to what most people would consider a career in which he could help others, which is to become a lawyer. Despite your thoughts and feelings on lawyers, most people who say they want to become a lawyer is because they believe somebody has the right for a good defense, or because they want to make sure that bad people go away. Whichever perspective you take, the career in and of itself is to help people. But Sam is not interested in helping all of these people who might be walking into a world they know nothing about with the supernatural. He's strictly looking for their dad so that he can find out what happened to Jessica. And Dean, it's very clear as well that he's been doing this for quite some time, and he does it, as he says, because that's what they get to do. They know about it. It's up to them to help and save people. Daddy knows best. Not too much in the world of finding out more about Daddy Dearest, about their father. He's not there. They can't get a hold of him. The trail is going cold, but they're not sure where he is. And that is very interesting. Another fun fact, I'm not entirely sure where to throw this in, but I think I might throw it into the segment on You've Seen Them Before, or the segment about Who Are We This Week. Their names are Ford and Hamill, which I immediately clocked as a Star Wars reference. And the child is called Lucas, which is also, of course, Luke Skywalker. So I found that really fun because Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill played the characters of Han Solo and Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. So who are we this week? They are Officers Ford and Hamill. Oftentimes the who are we this week I don't catch. I'll have to look it up on a trivia site because I know nothing about the names of famous rock guitarists and drummers. But when they do something sci-fi, I do recognize it. Another solid episode. It's not hard to sit through. It's not super slow. It's not super fast. It is a solid Monster of the Week episode, full of tropes. But I will say that not super memorable. It is just another Monster of the Week episode and does not contribute to anything big picture I feel going on, except clearly Dean and Sam are still looking for their father and hunting while they're at it. A fun episode. Another fun thing for me to do often is to say, ooh, I've seen that person before. Where have I seen them before? I always love it when I can recognize where I've seen them before or not. And of course, because this show is now 20 years old, whenever I see a child actor, I'm always curious to see if they continued acting and if they were in anything afterwards, because it has been 20 years. So at the moment, I did not recognize anything that the child actor had been in, but it's always something to contemplate that this is how our heroes looked 20 years ago, and everyone does get older. So, that is Dead in the Water. And next week, we are going to talk about Phantom Travelers. What does that mean? Where will we go? Where will we be? And what part of America are we going to visit next? We'll see that very, very soon. So, we'll connect on the road again soon in Phantom Travelers. Thank you so much for listening to First Watch, a Supernatural Rewatch podcast.